Hello, we're going to review managing expenses in QuickBooks. This is going to be a pretty straightforward chapter, but it does have a lot of details, and I want to go through those details with you. Our objectives for this conversation is going to set up a vendors in the vendor list, use classes, understand them and use them, and also understand and use job costing in QuickBooks, entering some transactions in different ways, and in managing accounts payable transactions and in print checks. We're going to learn how to void checks. We're going to track loans in QuickBooks and deal with creating and applying credits. Also, with regard to accounts payable, we're going to deal with vendor deposits and refunds, track petty cash, credit card payments, and reports. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is we have various ways of entering expenses in QuickBooks, and first is with cash vendors and second with credit vendors. Obviously, when you deal with cash vendors, you're going to be dealing with just paying as the bill is received and once or services are rendered. But with credit invoices, we may pay the bill long after we receive the services. So we want to make sure that happens, and it goes through the process of entering in the system and paying the bill. But before we pay anybody, we must have a vendor on our list. So setting up vendors is an important part of the accounts payable process. And here's a screenshot of what it looks like to enter a bill. It is important that we include as much information for that invoice on that vendor as possible, including information in an additional tab, which includes account number, general ledger, and so forth. Activating class tracking is important because it allows you to separate income expenses by department, location, profit center, or some other breakdown that you may think is important for your organization. But it does create separate profit and loss statements, and that's important too if you're trying to track different departments and evaluate their efficiency and profitability. Tracking job costs is important too because you need to know whether or not you're earning profit on your jobs or losing money on the job, and that'll allow you to track those expenses and revenues, obviously. And an example here is shown here with Bob Mason. Even allows you to bill back, and of course you can present profit and loss job statement that encloses your income and expenses separate for each job. That's important when you're trying to evaluate profitability. Well, you pay your vendors, and you obviously can pay them in several ways in QuickBooks, as in any other accounting software: check, credit card, or electronic funds transfer, or cash. There are three situations which you need to do that is when you manually write a check and you record a transaction in your account register similar to Quicken that you've had and that you probably have been aware of. But also, you can enter bills through the enter bills window and accounts payable and use pay bills to pay the bill, which just seems to be the straightforward and the most logical way to do it for the most part. But there are times when you want to just write a check in the checks window and then print it out, and that's the quickest way to do it. But either way, it's good. No, nothing's wrong or right here. It's just a matter of preference and individual need. You can use your register, and this register looks very much like what Quicken was about years and years ago, where all your transactions were pretty much posted in this one ledger, where it includes your date, invoice or transaction number, payee, or account, memo, payment or deposit, and your balance, and it always gave you a running balance of your cash account. And that's okay to do that. It even allows you to split your transaction, but there are times when you want to use the banking menu to write checks. And again, there's no right or wrong. It's just a question of whether or not this is the best way to generate payments if you're paying one or two bills. But if you're paying a group, there may be other ways to do it. Entering bills in QuickBooks, this is a screenshot of what it looks like. Pretty straightforward. General information you'll need, which is the vendor, account number, amount, and obviously a class or customer or both. And these items are automatically deposited, actually entered and debiting your expense, and obviously going to offset the accounts payable. But in order to pay these bills, when you enter them in this way, you have to go through the pay bill window. And this report here is just an example of how you can determine how many invoices there are remaining unpaid, and to determine if they would need to be paid, and determine if you are willing to pay them at that time. Bills are tracked in accounts payable. When you use that function, obviously your bills are going to be reducing your accounts payable when you pay them. And to do that, you go to the vendor section, pay bills function in the vendor section of your home screen, and select pay bills. This is what the screen would look like when you pay in bills, and it obviously gives you a way to range the dates, and also filter your report to get the invoices or the vendors that you want to pay for that particular transaction. Please make note the fact that you can apply your discounts or credits to those individual items. Select the payment method and then pay your select bills. Very, very simple, 4 or 5 steps, and that's it. At this point here, you just tell QuickBooks which voucher payment that you want to make for these particular bills, and you are set to go. Printing checks is an easy step, but if you make a mistake, you can always reprint because it gives you a confirmation at the end to ensure that those bills are printed, those checks are printed correctly. Voiding the check is a good way to void a check if you feel that the bill is not valid, or for some reason you made an error that you can't correct, but you have to just void the check. And it retains a record of the payment and avoids gaps in check sequence. But it also allows you to have an audit trail, which is important for us accountants. You want to track your loans, or any loan. Any loan that you might have, this is a great way to do it. Instead of using Excel worksheet and keep it up, you can integrate your loans into the QuickBooks system. It automatically reduces the amount that's owed, considering interest and principal portions, and it will be automatically updated as you make each payment, which is a wonderful thing. It keeps you from having to use Excel to update your payments, your loans, tracking your loans. Vendor credits are needed sometimes when there are errors or there are discounts that you are entitled to, and then it's easy to enter those using the credit button. Applying those credits to a vendor is also available, or you can select, or you can actually request a refund. But in order to do that, you go to your vendor's menu and pay bills if you're applying it to your vendor, and you can verify the payment method and amount, click the check amount, and then in the section where it says discounts and credits window at the bottom of the screen, you can click on that and then apply those payments or those credits to that invoice. Sometimes it will zero it out, or other times it may leave a balance, but in the end of the day, you are able to apply a credit specifically to a vendor. And this is a screenshot that shows you exactly how it's to be done, and highlighting the credit section and the payment method. Vendor deposits often are needed when small companies don't have established credit history, and a vendor will say, I will not deliver these supplies to you unless you make a deposit to me. And in QuickBooks, you can do that and offset accounts payable, thus avoiding creating an expense since you have not incurred one, and it goes in and out. It's like a wash transaction. So, but if you do it in a different way, you can avoid using accounts payable altogether just by going directly to the expense account. Okay. Now, again, this is just more than one way to deal with deposits, and we're just going to go through the banking where you write a check. But instead of it coding the check to an expense, you would code it accounts payable. And this will put a credit out there, so when the bill does come, you can apply that code to the accounts payable. And it just gives it a wash. And this is just an example of what it would look like if you were to go into the system and generate a vendor deposit. Rodriguez Rentals, obviously you don't have a vendor relationship with them, so they're requiring that you make a $300 deposit. So instead of it going into some kind of expense account, it's going to go directly into accounts payable, and that accounts payable will sit there until the invoice comes and we offset it. Refunds happen when you obviously overpay, or they're refunding you amount. Accounts payable will be reversed, and then the main thing is you receive your cash back, and it's just the opposite. So when you use the system to get a refund from a vendor, it actually just reverses the transaction and leaves you back at a zero balance. But if you prepay the amount, then you'll obviously have to request a refund check to offset that credit balance that's sitting in accounts payable and bring you back to zero. And this is just an example of what it would look like if you had been given a refund for your deposit. And again, it's going to offset the account that you originally charged in the beginning, and the net effect should be exactly zero. And this is just going to give you an example. If you don't use accounts payable to code the actual check, instead you use a expense account. In this case, you would have to offset the expense account that you debited in the beginning, so that the entry itself would be obviously netted out to zero. Tracking petty cash is relatively simple, and it's used in QuickBooks by setting up a separate account called petty cash. And again, it does track minor expenditures, $50, $25, $10 for supplies, etc. And those minor cash accounts is generally de minimis don't require issuing a check, and it's probably much more efficient to handle it that way than writing a check. And QuickBooks has no problem handling those kind of transactions. Credit cards, there is an interface within QuickBooks which allows you to track your credit card purchases. And again, you set it up as a credit card account in QuickBooks for each card, and it allows you to track your cards, payments that you'll make to your credit card payments, and then maintain those accounts so they all match your bank statement that comes in at some future point. And this is just a screenshot of what it will look like as you enter transactions that are being paid through your credit card. At the end of each month, or even on a weekly basis, running vendor balance details are important because it does give you an idea of what your cash requirements will be for the following week or month, and you can run those reports by in detail or by transaction. And any information that you need, pretty much you can modify your reports to include or exclude information. So in essence, what we've done today is set up vendors on our vendor list. We have set up classes, and we understand how they work, and their use will be essential in QuickBooks, particularly in this course. We'll be looking at QuickBooks for job costing, and that, again, that's a very important step, which we will explore in great detail in this course, and entering expenses in several ways, and managing your accounts payable transaction by printing checks and voiding checks when errors are made, and tracking loans and vendor credits. We also dealt with handling refunds and deposits from our vendors and tracking petty cash and credit card payments. And at the end of each month or period, we run reports to verify the information we have and keeping track of where we stand with our vendors and our cash requirements or cash needs. This is the end of our summary of managing expenses. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to list those questions in the discussion forum under Q&A, and we will talk through those. And thank you very much for your attention.